The 2023 NFL Draft is in the books. So on this episode, we're going to go over where we got things right and where we got things wrong on the Fired Up NFL Draft podcast.
You're listening to the Fired Up Podcast Network. Let's get fired up.
And I'm your host, Brian Lamb from NFLDraftLounge.com, joined as always by Sean Balzer. What's up, Sean?
What's up, Brian? Doing pretty well. Sad the draft's over. Always a fun experience. Hate to wait another year for it. And, now we've got, 4 more months until football really starts. So sad time of the year, but fun to look back at what we got right, what we got wrong. Happy to own my L's, but I think we had a pretty good draft season.
We did. So now all the teams have selected their players, so it's time for the end of the world. So we're going to look at what we got right and what we got wrong and go from there. So you're going to be first up on the show with Sam Laporta, who was selected 34th overall by the Lions.
So we did these hot takes, and listen, I put together these hot takes to try to be as spicy as possible. Things that I thought maybe had a small chance of happening, but weren't super likely. And one of them was Sam Laporta's tight end 3. Little did I know that wasn't spicy enough. Listen, I like Michael Mayer. I'm shocked that Sam Laporta went over Michael Mayer. But I love the guy. Just like I said, athletic freak. He didn't have the high production there at Iowa because that offense was not great. He commanded heavy target share, especially for an inline tight end. I love Sam Laporta. I thought it would take 2 years for this hot take to look good, but boom, right out of the gate, the Lions, who did all kinds of crazy stuff in this draft, made that take look good. Nothing against Luke Musgrave. And, we didn't know Darnell Washington had the, I believe it was a knee injury that caused him to fall. Who knows if he had a chance to go above Laporta, but I'm taking a full victory lap on Sam Laporta going 34th overall here as tight end 2. I think he could rival Kincaid as the best receiving tight end in this class. Obviously I think Michael Mayer's right there, but the later round Mark Andrews comp not as crazy anymore.
No, he didn't have a lot of things high, including his height. Came in at 6'3". He was the shortest tight end at the NFL Combine. Dalton Kincaid was just above him by, I think, 2/8, whatever that is. Still shortest tight end at the Combine. If you go back to what I said about the tight end class, I said you can kind of go back to, I think it was the 2017 or 2018 tight end group, and there were a lot of comparisons there. You have 3 or 4 different types of tight ends in each class. And if you go back to look at that, where you had people like Hayden Hurst, Ian Thomas, I think Mark Andrews was in that one as well.
Mark Andrews, Goddard was in there.
Jasecki, all these guys. A bunch of different tight ends, different makeups, and they all just kind of went, not really according to kind of how most draft analysts had them ranked. And if you go back and look at the draft this past weekend, I think it was kind of the same way. A lot of people had Michael Mayer first. Laporta, I think, was maybe down a little bit further. Dalton Kincaid was up there. Luke Musgrave was up there. I don't know if Schoonmaker was as high as he was. Same thing with Britton Strange. Like I said, I think you could kind of make some comparisons between those two. And in my opinion, it's kind of how it played out.
Yeah. I don't think anybody had Schoonmaker higher than maybe 6. I want to say Zierlein.
Yeah, it was.
That's the highest I saw him.
Yeah. Even going further down that tight end class, people like Payne Durham. Watched him play at the Senior Bowl. Wasn't super impressed. but he came off in the 5th round, 171 overall.
Zach Kuntz went a little bit lower than I thought he would. He tested 10 on relative athletic score, which we consistently quote, but obviously he hit a 10 on there. He's an athletic monster. I thought maybe he'd go a little bit higher.
Yeah, that was 220 overall to the Jets. Next up, this comes from our mock draft 2.0. I had Clemson defensive lineman Brian Breesy going 29th overall to the Saints. It's just a fit I've liked all year long. And now that we see it happen, I'm gonna own that one a little bit. Love that pick, love that fit. Think it's the right pairing for both of those guys.
Yeah, early in the offseason, I mean, I don't think either one of us would have put them at 29, especially the Saints, who didn't have a first-round pick early in the offseason. It was a little bit of a fall for him, but good for him. He still ends up in the first. Small L for me here. I struggled. I tried to fit him in 29, 30, 31 in my final mock. I left him out. I put him as one of my first 5 out. It's hard to fit him in, but congrats to you. You nailed this one for sure.
Yeah, I did a mock draft in February, 4 rounds. This was before Carolina moved up to 1. So I actually had the Colts moving up to 1 and Carolina moving up to 5 with Seattle. And I had Seattle taking Brian Breesy 9th there. So like you mentioned, there is a fall there, but I guess I saw it and picked up on it. So
nailed it.
Moving on, Deonte Banks goes 24th overall to the New York Football Giants.
I'm glad we're doing all the correct things first to boost my ego before we kill it. Deonte Banks, this was a spicy take. When we recorded that, I think it was fairly spicy. I didn't look at the line on DraftKings or anything, but putting Deonte Banks above Joey Porter at the time was it was a hot take. Maybe it wasn't a 10 out of 10 on the spicy level, but it was definitely a hot take at the time. The Emmanuel Forbes team hadn't really come in hot there at that time either. I mean, like I said, on that hot take, there was just so many teams that had him in, roughly around the teams that were picking 10 to 20. And then I think 22, like I said, I thought the Ravens were the absolute floor, but of all the players that had top 30 visits, I think he was, one of the most sought after. The interest was there, and it was clear he's going, 15 to 20, 22. So nailed it.
Yeah. NFL mock draft database had Joey Porter 14th, Deonte Banks 20th. And their projection for Porter was 16th to Washington. They ended up taking Emmanuel Forbes. I thought that was really early for him. And then the projection for Deonte Banks was going 17 to the Steelers. So obviously, they went offensive lineman. They took Broderick Jones when they moved up to 14, and then took Porter 32nd overall. So
I know this take isn't about Emmanuel Forbes, and the guy's a stud. Don't get me wrong, but 166 pounds. That's light. It's an interesting draft for size profiles, obviously, with Bryce being the most interesting one.
Well, you can look at Tank Dell too. I think he's 165. He's going to be a slot receiver in the NFL. That dude's going to get crushed.
There's a bunch of tiny guys, especially the slot wide receivers, be very interesting to follow.
So another one, I feel like I got it right. I talked about it on here for the hot takes. It was that I thought that the first round lacked premium trade value. So, looking back at it, we see Houston moved up for Will Anderson up to 3. Outside of that, there really weren't that many big jumps for a player, right? You didn't see anybody move from the 20s up to early teens. You didn't see anybody, give up multiple picks to move all the way up. You saw Philadelphia move up 1, right, for Jalen Carter. The Lions moved up and kind of moved around the board. So did Arizona. Pittsburgh, we just mentioned. But you really didn't see big jumps that we've seen in the past.
We only saw the one first round pick, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to own that one for obvious reasons. But, I just didn't think that this draft and these players really contain premium trade value, not just for the quarterback position, but all positions, really.
Yeah, I'll definitely give you this one. The area where I thought you had the highest probability of being wrong was with Hendon Hooker or Will Levis falling to the 10-ish range with somebody like maybe Minnesota trading up. And not only did that not happen, they passed on Will Levis and Hendon Hooker altogether. So, yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that the Houston Texans were going to trade up from 12 to 3 with their own first round pick in 2024, which is likely to be quite valuable. Still don't really understand that one. Will Anderson, obviously a beast, great prospect. Congrats, Houston. You got a stud, but not a big fan of the use of resources there. So, hey, good call on this one for sure.
I will defend Houston for just a quick minute. Entering the 2023 draft, they came in with 12 picks, and I think they held the highest value, tied with Kansas City, right?
Kansas City, really?
Yeah. So they're not going to, or maybe Kansas City also had 12 picks. I think those two teams had the highest number of draft picks at one point. So it's unlikely that they were going to use all 12 picks. Okay. You have a lot of holes on your team. At some point, you got to fill them. So it's getting tough. I like them taking CJ Stroud at 2 because that completely resets and just destroys everybody's board from that point down, right?
Yeah, mine included. But despite the fact that they ruined my board, like props to them for that one. Congratulations, you selected the second best quarterback in this draft. You didn't make a huge
According to some.
You didn't make a huge mistake by passing on quarterback altogether. Yeah, I like CJ Stroud. I hope he hits for you, Houston. Congrats on not making a terrible decision by passing up quarterback altogether.
Yeah. So by taking Stroud, I think that kind of really killed Tennessee's plan to move up. I know that was reported out there.
Quite possibly, yeah.
So, they killed that. So now it's just them, right? They just had to beat the offer. So I like them coming up to get a franchise piece on the defensive line in Will Anderson Jr. I would have gone Tyree Wilson, but that's just me. I think he's a more versatile player. Wilson, I think, can play some defensive tackle, defensive end, and outside linebacker. I think Will Anderson Jr. is probably more of just a defensive end. I don't know if he can really do more than that. He does it well. He does it great. I just don't know if he's more than that. And like we've talked about off of here, I thought that Will Anderson lacked a lot of tools in his arsenal to be able to defeat offensive tackles. I think he's raw. But at the same time, I think D'Amico Ryans is probably the right guy to develop him. So I love the fit, and I'll defend that trade a little bit. In that you have 12 picks, you're not going to use them all. Yeah, you're not going to compete for a Super Bowl next year, but you got to take a swing for it, right? And you've been one to mention it on like these quarterbacks. Well, you have these two guys, and this one's a really good player, but I think he's a safe option, and this one has a higher ceiling, but that floor may be lower. And you're like, well, I don't want to go safe. So, they took a swing. We'll see if it plays out for them. It's a lot to give up, like you said, but they do have Cleveland's first round pick next year, so they're still picking in the first round. So it's not a ton to give up, but we'll see if it works out for them.
Terrible process in my mind. But listen, you got your quarterback, you got a stud D end. just close your eyes when that pick ends up as Marvin Harrison Jr. next year.
There's 6 worthy. All right, you're up with 4 wide receivers selected in the first round.
So I'm taking a victory lap here because I've been pushing this all off season that the top 4 wide receivers are going to go in the first round, and it was just nonstop in the weeks leading up to the draft that there might only be 2 wide receivers in the first round. Kuiper, McShay kept leaving Quentin Johnston out of the first. Benjamin Albright tweeted that we may see more running backs come off the first than wide receivers. Which I'm sitting here thinking, does he think Charbonnet's a 1 all of a sudden? Does he really think like we're only going to get who I assume he thought was Jackson Smith and Jigba in the first? But early in the offseason, McShay had Jackson Smith and Jigba out of the first. There was so much animosity towards this wide receiver group, and it went overboard. Like early in the offseason, people loved Quentin Johnston. At least the mocks did. He was in the 10 to 15 range. I thought that was high. At no point did I say that any of these wide receivers are Jamar Chase or Jalen Waddle or Devonta Smith or Justin Jefferson, right? But these wide receivers belong in the first round, and these wide receivers are going to be very productive in the NFL. Now, landing spot and quarterback and situation and yada, yada, yada. But we got our 4, to be fully transparent. My hot take was that we might get 5. Now that was a 10 out of 10 spicy take. I only missed it by 8 spots. I believe Mingo went 8 spots later. I thought that there was a chance that a Mingo or a Hyatt might go there to Kansas City. There were just so many teams that needed wide receiver at 20 to 31, including at 20, 21, 22, and 23, just like it went in the draft. Honestly, when I got boom, 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 there at 20 to 23, I thought maybe the Giants, maybe the Cowboys, maybe the Bills, maybe the Chiefs would make that happen. So that was a fun hour for me, hoping. I realized, listen, I knew that was a super spicy take at the beginning, but I'm still taking my victory lap on the over 3.5, which I would have bet in a heartbeat if we could do that down in Florida.
Yeah, I can't remember what I had the Chiefs doing in our mock draft 2.0, but I know that we discussed wide receiver, and I told you there's no way I'm doing it.
You passed on
Right.
on Jordan Addison and I think Quentin Johnston as well.
Yeah, I mean, looking at their group, I just didn't see it.
Or no, you passed on. I think it was Zay and Quentin.
It probably was, and Jalen. Yeah. I will take a what is this? 5A, and early on in the process, I talked to you about Quentin Johnston, and you told me no, it's too early to talk about a TCU wide receiver. So I'm going to take a little bit of a W on that one. Came off 21st.
I think I when I said too soon, I meant I'm an Eagles fan, and we took Jalen Reagor 2-3 years ago. It's too soon to talk to me about a TCU wide receiver. And by the way,
I don't care.
By the way,
21st.
By the way, they both went 21st overall. So blessings to you, Quentin Johnston. I hope you can break that history. And I think you will. A great landing spot. I think the boom and bust conversation around Quentin Johnston is less bust in that situation. Maybe he doesn't become a star, but playing for the Chargers in that dome with Justin Herbert, he's unlikely to completely fail.
Yeah, Reagor went to the Eagles, and Johnston goes to the Chargers, and one of those teams will win a Super Bowl first, and it's not going to be the Eagles. Next up, I have Will Levis being selected 33rd overall by the Titans. I know in our 2.0, I had Levis going first. I just wanted to completely blow it up.
Yeah, good.
I thought he would go first overall.
Totally makes sense to victory lap this. Yeah.
But I mean, going back, I've said that I thought that there would be a quarterback that slid, and like we've talked about, if you get past Indianapolis at 4, I really didn't see a team, maybe the Titans, obviously, at 11, but you move past that point, and I really just didn't see a landing spot for a quarterback. So I think it's interesting too that Tennessee kind of used the same plan that they used for Malik Willis. Pass on him, show some patience, wait for him to come down, pick him when it's right. Don't overpick for him. Don't give up, a considerable amount to. And obviously they got him there at 33. Don't know if I love the fit. Don't know if I love Will Levis as a player either. But I think he's going to get a real shot to start there. Obviously, I think that they'll probably cut Tannehill, so it'll be between Will Levis and Malik Willis. See how that one plays out.
I kind of felt the same way about Levis as I did about Johnston when we're talking about him being, Levis top 5, Johnston top 10, 12. I thought that was a little crazy and higher bust potential, but with Johnston going at 21 and Levis at 33, all of a sudden I'm a Johnston and Levis fan. I think that these are good selections at good locations. So, we'll see what happens with Will Levis. I'm certainly not confident that he'll be a star in the league, but at 33 overall, commend the Titans for making the move, especially trading up to do so.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. I don't know what they gave up for it, but I know it wasn't a considerable amount.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. It might have been a 3. I don't have it in front of me either.
Yeah. I mean, I love the value there, right?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Reportedly, they were trying to get back into the back end of the first round. I think we had highlighted Philly as a possibility there. Philly was in love with Nolan Smith, and the fact that he became, that he was available at 30 was pretty shocking. And then I don't even want to try to butcher the Kansas State guy's name, Anudike, going 31 to the Chiefs. Reportedly they really liked him as well, and those are guys that most everybody had as a first round pick. So I think that the value there just wasn't enough for Philly or Kansas City to move back. Or we're sitting here talking about Will Levis being a first round pick.
Yeah. I mean, I think if they could have got Stetson Bennett to play safety, the Eagles probably would have taken them too. Next up, we're going to go where we got things wrong. Lucas Van Ness, 13th overall. Will McDonald, 15th overall.
Yeah, I'll own this one. I knew based off of conversations, based off of talk and mock drafts and the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, that these guys were going to go in the first round. I didn't like the tape. I mean, Will McDonald had the production over at Iowa State, 22 sacks, 7 forced fumbles. I saw a guy that was a liability against the run. I worry at the NFL level, he's more of like a situational pass rusher, maybe a Sam linebacker. The pass rush ability is absolutely there. So I get that, and I get the value in that. But I mean, you got to take the guy off the field. That's going to be a problem. So maybe he develops and proves me wrong. I felt similarly with Lucas Van Ness. I see the tools there to potentially develop. I knew he's going to be a first round pick. I had both these guys in my final mock in the first, so I wasn't way off, but going 13 and 15, both of those shocked me. More so Lucas Van Ness, because I was sure that this was the year, Packer fans. I'm sorry. I was sure you were getting your first round wide receiver. Who did they end up with? Jaden Reed. I do love Jaden Reed. He is one of my favorite.
And 2 tight ends.
And 2 tight ends. So, I mean, you did get some pass catching help, but I thought this was the year that you take the first round wide receiver finally. Still love Jackson Smith and Jigba. Sorry, he's not a Packer. So that, especially when they made that trade, I was sure that they had, moved themselves up a couple spots to secure the wide receiver 1 in this draft class. A guy who I think, if he can develop properly and handle work on the outside, can be a true number 1 in this league. But yeah, as far as Lucas Van Ness and Will McDonald, it didn't miss by a ton, but in no world did I have them 13 and 15. It was always, 27, 8 to 31. These were the last 2 guys I was always trying to jam in, those 2 and Udike Uzoma.
Yeah, the Packers actually took 3 wide receivers. They took Jaden Reed, 50th overall in the second round, came back in the 5th round at 159 overall for Dontavian Wicks out of Virginia. And then in the 7th round at 256 overall, they took Grant Dubose out of Charlotte, who I saw at the Senior Bowl. Expected more out of him at the Senior Bowl. Don't know if his performance there really matched his tape. So I think an interesting player to watch during training camp and see. My guess is it's probably headed for practice squad there. So
I wish I made Jaden Reed a spicy take because he was a late round wide receiver that I was a big fan of, not a 50th overall wide receiver. That feels high, but he could pay it off. He could absolutely pay it off. So excited to see how he does there in Green Bay.
Yeah, it was an interesting draft for the wide receiver position because
all these small guys, all these small guys.
You have Quentin Johnston at 6'4", Jonathan Mingo to Rashee Rice at 6'2", and then Cedric Tillman at 6'3", Michael Wilson at 6'2", Shorter at 6'4", Elijah Higgins at 6'3", Xavier Hutchinson at 6'3". I'm all the way down to the 6th round. Those are your tall guys. That's it.
Yeah, and my boy Bryce Ford Wheaton went undrafted, unfortunately.
And then you've got JSN at 6 foot, Zay Flowers at 5'10", Addison at 6 foot, Reed at 6 foot, Marvin Mims at 5'11", Tank Dell at 5'10", Hyatt at 6 foot, Downs at 5'10", Trey Tucker at 5'9", Darius Davis at 5'10", Charlie Jones at 6 foot, Tyler Scott at 5'11", Dontavian Wicks at 6'1", Parker Washington at 5'10". I mean,
that's an unbelievable amount of short for NFL.
And they were all at the top. They were all at the top. I mean, A.T. Perry, 6'5". I think he's the tallest one in the class. So it was just a really, really interesting group of wide receivers because you had one tall guy at the top of the class, towards the top of the class, at that top tier, then a handful of slot receivers. So where do you take them? Where do they come off the board? Even going through that process, you hear stuff about Josh Downs, his size, Tank Dell, his size, Jalen Hyatt, his size, Trey Tucker, his size. Again, just go down the board, everybody's size.
It's the size draft for sure.
Yeah.
All the way around.
Yeah, Tank Dell at 165, by the way. Insane. Moving on, I'm up. Joey Porter selected 32nd overall by the Steelers. So going back to Pittsburgh, they were picking 17th. They moved up to 14th for Broderick Jones, the offensive tackle out of Georgia, and then circled back in the 2nd round for Porter Jr., cornerback out of Penn State. I actually had those 2 picks swapped. I thought that they would go corner in the 1st round and offensive tackle to start that 2nd round, and I was off a little bit.
Yeah, I think we were close on our final mock podcast. We wanted to go offensive tackle, and then I think I may have convinced you to go to Joey Porter. For me, it was always offensive tackle or Joey Porter. I didn't think that they were going to take another corner. Corner was definitely a need, but the Steelers had been signaling all offseason that they were going to go for offensive tackle at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine. They made it clear they were all about offensive tackle. The Steelers don't really hide what they're looking to do. I wrote about that in my mock. We knew it was going to be Kenny Pickett. We knew it was going to be Najee Harris. I'm not surprised at all that they ended up going offensive tackle. And, maybe they read the board a little bit better than we did and saw Joey Porter was going to slide and they were able to get him there. They didn't have to trade up. They got the 32nd selection because of the Chase Claypool trade, and they're able to secure both. So hey, good for them. And I'll take a minor L here. While I had Banks over Porter, I definitely thought Porter was going to be a first round pick. So that's I forget the exact stat, but that's another year of no Penn State corner in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the group of offensive tackles, John Harrison was still on the board. He came off 27th. Matthew Brown, who I think is going to play inside, but he was listed as a tackle. That was 38th. Cody Mauck, he's playing inside. Tyler Steen, he came off 65th. Wanya Morris, 92. Blake Freeland and DeJuan Jones, who I think are really similar. They came off 106 and 111 in the fourth round. So I thought that there was a shot that they would use that second round pick on DeJuan Jones. So I was a little surprised there when he fell all the way to the fourth round as he did. But, you know, I think for Pittsburgh, they probably identified that as a higher value than corner. And, you know, obviously it worked out for them because I think they got the player that they wanted.
Yeah, definitely more of a O-line run than cornerback run. So a little bit of a surprise, at least. And Steelers read it right. And hey, the Steelers had a great draft. Good for them.
Yeah. Moving on, Hendon Hooker selected 68th overall by the Lions.
This is a big L for me. Maybe it's the big L for the NFL and not me. We'll see. I liked Hendon Hooker, man, and I still like Hendon Hooker. I think the Lions actually, I think, is a great landing spot for him, despite the fact that they were seemingly drunk when they drafted. Hendon Hooker behind that offensive line with probably a full year to learn the playbook, get fully healthy, I think is a great landing spot for him. But the L here is I thought he was a first round pick. You know, I understand he's 25 years old. I understand the offense was a little, I don't even like to use the word gimmicky. The offense was wasn't a pro style offense. Okay. It was a college setup, and it was a little more one read. He's going to have to learn how to, read defenses better in the right situation, which I think this can be. Love their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, I believe, did a great job last year. It's still a great situation. So I'm happy Hendon Hooker is going to the Lions, but I missed. I thought for sure he was a first round pick. I thought that, the Bucks should consider him at 19. I thought the Vikings should consider him at 24. I thought there was a chance there that the 29, 30, 31 somebody might try to trade back up for him. I didn't really assume that Will Levis was still going to be available there. There were every time a quarterback needy team selected, I was like, my buddies are like, oh, is it Levis? Is it Levis? I'm like, could it be Hooker? Could it be Hooker? So listen, I missed on this as far as the draft goes. I'll own this. But listen, Hendon Hooker's got a fan in me. I'll be following him. I think it's a great landing spot. And I hope he proves everybody wrong here in a year or two.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of talk about his age, which doesn't bother me. If you're telling me that I can get a quarterback for 15 years over their career versus 12, I'm still going to take 12.
A little bit, to be fair to the haters, of which I am not, a little bit of this is his, dual threat mobility, right? And he's not going to be a dual threat at age 30, probably 3, 4, 5. I think coming off of the ACL that he will be a dual threat, at 25, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. That does go away eventually, and that's a conversation, for the Lamars and the Jalens of the world. But,
yeah, I don't think it had to do with his mobility. I think that they just looked at the number and wanted to say it. Now, however, I will say that looking at what the Lions did do, I know that you're hard on them. I'm not as hard on them. Look, they moved back to 12, still got Jahmyr Gibbs. Could they have gotten him with the 18th pick? Probably so. But in doing so, they also got the 34th pick out of that, which they used for Laporta. So they get Gibbs, you get Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Hendon Hooker. Those 5 players right there, I think, are highly rated. You can say that Jahmyr Gibbs shouldn't have come off the board there at 12, but I think he was going to come off the board in the first round. So, is it a premium pick? Sure.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you have your board and you have the players that you want to go after, you go after them. You can't.
Sure, that's what they did, and their board's stupid. It was they didn't consider positional value, and
is he an upgrade over Swift?
Is Jahmyr Gibbs an upgrade over Swift? They clearly think so. I'm not sure, but we never got to really see because they never committed to him. It's irrelevant of whether or not he's an upgrade over Swift. He's not a needle mover past Swift. If you've got Swift as your 3-down back, which they never did, but if you have Swift as your 3-down back and you switch him out for Jahmyr Gibbs, you don't suddenly win more games. That's not how it works. That's not how running backs are. That's just the fact about running backs. I don't want to beat positional value to death here, but that's the problem with what the Lions did. They didn't factor in positional value at all. You don't take a running back at 12. I don't care who he is. And you don't take a linebacker at 18 either. That's just not an off-ball middle linebacker type. That's not good use of first-round picks. And I hate to say it because I'm not a Lions.
I think you're dead wrong.
I'm not. I'm right. I hate to say it though. I'm not a Lions fan, but they've been such an exciting team. They've been fun to watch. And, putting Jahmyr Gibbs in there is not going to make them less fun to watch. That's for sure. But they could have done a lot more with those picks and move the needle a lot more towards actually winning a Super Bowl, which, again, is what it's all about.
Yeah, we'll disagree.
Running back ain't winning you a Super Bowl.
Myles Murphy comes off the board 28th overall by the Bengals. Throughout this whole process, I've had him ranked high. At some point, I had him top 10. I really thought maybe he was top 15. Talent. I thought he'd certainly come off the board before some of these other guys. So I think it's a little interesting to see where he did come off. Looking at that position of guys that came off the board in front of him. Obviously, you have Murphy at 28, McDonald at 15, Nessett at 13. Wilson at 7, and then Anderson at 3. So there's from 15 to 28. There's that big gap of edge rushers. So I didn't think that gap would be as big as what it was. And then, obviously Murphy at 28. Nolan Smith goes to the Philadelphia Bulldogs at 30. Felix Anudike Uzomah, 31st. Derek Hall, who I thought was a little overdrafted, 37th to Seattle. And then Isaiah Foskey goes 40 to New Orleans. And BJ Ojulari, 41st to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
So I just didn't think that there would be that big of a gap in the first round. And there was, and that's what I got wrong.
Yeah, there was no world where I had Murphy below McDonald and Van Ness. I mean, that's part of my L take there, but Murphy, Nolan Smith, those were hard to decide between which one of those to have higher. But McDonald and Van Ness were always lower. And again, we're still talking first round picks here, but the order and where they ended up falling or going was definitely surprising.
We just beat this one to a dead horse, but why not do it again? Jack Campbell selected 18th to the Lions.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. I just listen. Part of this is an L on my part, and I'll own that. It wasn't unusual to have Jack Campbell as a first round pick. I just didn't see it. I didn't see it on the tape, and I didn't see the positional value. But I'm not the Detroit Lions, so I don't want to go down that path too hard here. Jack Campbell's a great player. He'll be a great player for them. They got him. They got Laporta. They got Gibbs. Those are exciting guys to add to the team. Probably makes the team better. I don't see the value of taking an off-ball linebacker and Jack Campbell at 18, especially with the guys on the board, man. I mean, some of these pass rushers, some of those wide receivers, the Lions are going into the year with stud and Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver and nothing else for 6 games. And, we'll see what Jameson can provide after that. But, you start 0-6, you're done.
Yeah, I think it's fitting that you're taking an L on this because you're dead wrong. Michael Mayer selected 35th overall by the Raiders. I get to throw in these comments when I'm the one controlling the banners. I think we all kind of considered Michael Mayer as the first round prospect in the 2023 NFL draft. He's not. Instead, he goes 35th to the Raiders. Dalton Kincaid, by the way, the only first round tight end in this class. As the board fell, you have Kincaid 25th to the Bills, Laporta 34th to the Lions, Mayer 35th to the Raiders, Musgrave 42 to the Packers, Schoonmaker 58th to Dallas. That was your top 5 tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Mayer not being a first round pick is a surprise. I think I'm Sam Laporta's biggest fan, and I did not see him going in front of Michael Mayer. That's shocking to me. I'm not quite sure what it was that made him fall. I didn't hear any injury concerns. Everybody throws the tag of like best all around tight end on him, and we as fans at least, we rate these tight ends more on their production in the passing game. We don't properly evaluate these tight ends as far as their blocking ability, and everybody loves Mark Andrews. Everybody likes George Kittle, but I guess the farther he gets into his career, the more you see some of those nasty blocks from him. But we don't really talk about the blocking ability and the elite blocking ability of some of these tight ends. So like I said, he gets the tag of being the best all around. Maybe the Bills value Dalton Kincaid more of like a slot wide receiver, and you see Mayer more of an inline tight end. And, when you calculate in positional value, like smart teams actually do, tight end is lower on the board. But if you consider, somebody like Dalton Kincaid to be kind of a slot wide receiver as well, then the value is there. And I like Kincaid all off season. I said he was the best receiving tight end, and I think that's why he ended up in the first round, and nobody else did. Mayer at 35, definitely. I mean, it's not a huge fall, but it definitely shocked me not to hear his name, Thursday night, and to hear my boy Laporta over him. That was a shocker.
Well, I think what was surprising for me with the Buffalo Bills is you have Dawson Knox on that roster, right? He's your starting tight end. Using a first round pick, because if you want to knock teams for doing it at running back, you got to knock them at doing it for tight end as well. You have a starting tight end on your roster and Dawson Knox, and you use a first round pick when you have other needs on the board because you're trying to win a Super Bowl. I don't think that Dalton Kincaid is getting you over the hump, right? But you use a first round pick on him. For me, it was early. It didn't make a whole lot of sense.
I think what happened.
I don't know what else I would have done in that situation, but because you really don't have an outside receiver that you can look to. But it probably wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have gone tight end. To me, it feels like maybe they panicked a little bit on that one.
So I think the board fell, right, and that's I think why they traded up. A lot of people thought Dalton Kincaid was going to be a Dallas Cowboy. They jumped right in front of them after that one run on wide receivers. So 4 wide receivers going back to back definitely played a part in how the rest of this draft fell. I think it played a part for the Giants as well. They're sitting there with 4 teams in front of them. They just need one wide receiver to not get selected for them to get one. They don't get any. And then, the Bills trade up to get Dalton Kincaid. Like I said, I agree that tight end is not a great value in the first round. They oftentimes take they take time to settle into the NFL. I mean, Kyle Pitts went, I want to say 4th overall, and we haven't really seen him excel as a pass catcher yet. we see more so with tight ends on their second contract of starting to provide that value, and the team that selected in the first round doesn't always get that. So I agree that there's less positional value at tight end 100%. However, Dalton Kincaid is that good of a receiving tight end. And if they can flex him into the slot, keep Dawson Knox as an inline tight end, I think they both play. I think they play it simultaneously. And Buffalo needed help in the passing game. They were constantly mocked wide receiver, and those top four go. And unfortunately for my hot take, they didn't want to reach on one, but they wanted help in the passing game. And behind Stephon Diggs, you've got Gabe Davis, who showed he could not be a steady number two. You got rookie Khalil Shakir. Looks like maybe he'll step up more into the slot role. We'll see what happens. But nobody proven outside of I wouldn't call Dawson Knox necessarily a proven receiving option. But I think with Diggs, Knox, Kincaid in the slot, and Gabe on the outside, that gives them more firepower that they needed. Frankly, the offense tailed off towards the end of the season, and it wasn't as strong and wasn't as intimidating. I mean, they barely pulled out a win against the Lions with third string quarterback Skylar Thompson, I believe. That the Bills just weren't the high powered offense we thought they were for the whole season, and they needed help.
Yep. All right, I think that's going to do it for this episode. I'm Brian Lamb. You can find me on Twitter at BrianLamb_ISN. Write for NFLDraftLounge.com, where we're already starting on 2024 content. So we've got over 35 scouting reports on the site already, a couple 2024 mock drafts, position rankings, the works. Tell them where they can find you, Sean.
Just at Sean Balzer on Twitter. We'll see what I can start cooking up on Draft Lounge for this next year's class. Excited to dig into it.
Yep, and don't forget to rate and review, like the podcast, and tell us what you think. Till then.